Welcome back to Twin Cam, this time to just a quick take on the 2019 Nismo 370Z. The Nismo 370Z has a 3.7 liter V6 motor, makes 350 horsepower, more than the stock variant, which I think is like 332, something like that, we'll put it up, and 276 pound-feet of torque. Through a 6-speed manual transmission with synchro rev match if you turn it on. If you want to. If you want to. Now for the suspension bits, it's an all-independent aluminum suspension, double wishbone front, multi-link rear, and the Nismo version of the car has the viscous limited slip rear differential, which you're probably going to want. You would. Also front and rear stabilizer bars, you can even see them down here within the grille opening. Great little car. It's been around, the 370, since 2009, which makes it a little bit long in the tooth. Yeah, and honestly, if you've driven a 350 before, this car is not that much different. Really, it's basically, essentially the same car. Yes, there are detailed differences, and time and tires have moved on a little bit, but they're pretty close. The 2019 Nismo 370Z sells for $47,120 as optioned here. So you can get this or a Mustang 5-liter or a number of other choices. There are a lot of ways to go. It's certainly not the top of the market, but it's not the bottom of the market either, particularly when you opt for the Nismo version. However, in this white with black and red trim, it's a good looking little car. From the front it's good, and I think the rear 3/4 view is great. And even though the car's been around a while in 350 and 370 form, this basic shape, with the rocker extensions and the splitter, people do like the way it looks. We got a number of positive comments. Right, we've had comments from across the board, older folks, younger folks, really good looking people. We even took it to Corvettes in Carlisle and people liked it there, along with a vet of course. If you're wondering about tire and wheel size, well, in front, 245 something. 245 40 19, and in the rear 285 35 19 on Dunlop rubber. Dunlop Sport Max to be exact. One further bit of driving hardware, it has the Exidy Performance clutch in it. Guys who know Japanese cars will recognize that name and understand what that means. It also has Nissan Sport brakes with red brake calipers. The red brake calipers don't make it stop quicker? Maybe. Now for the pros for the Nismo 370Z. It's a 2-seat sports car. I give it big credit for that because so many people are unwilling to buy a 2-seat sports car. And you just don't see many of them around. If you're driving it, people tend to notice it, particularly if they know anything about the Z, because the Nismo version, pretty rare. I think the best thing about the car, we agree, is the chassis. It's quite a good chassis. It is. It's tied together by those front and rear stabilizer bars and braces across the engine and across the rear from strut tower to strut tower, and it really does handle very well. In fact, it's quite communicative too through that steering wheel. Steering is heavy, but that's what you want in a 2-seat performance sports car, and it does. It hunkers down, takes a set, and goes through the corner without much drama. I think you also notice it soaks up those mid-corner bumps pretty well. Pretty well, better than you would expect for a car that rides pretty stiffly. But I like the Alcantara wheel too, it has a nice feel to it. And it's got those old 3-binnacle Z controls in it that are familiar to everybody who's ever been around one from the early 1970s. Through to today, and those are kind of nice. And those early 1970s Zs are popular today. They're hot right now, as pretty much any enthusiast knows. Now for the cons. Unfortunately, there's too long a list of negatives for the car, but that's just the way it is. Let's start with its power plant. Right under there. Yep, the thing that's sitting under the hood. It's very tightly packaged, as you'll see. But it's that Nissan VQ V6 architecture that's been around forever, and it's just not a playful partner or a great contributor to the overall balance and feel of the car. Does it have enough power? I think 350 is enough for it. It could have a bit more torque, I'd say. That would help. It really is kind of a chassis that's a little bit let down by this older engine. It'll rev, but it really doesn't like to rev that much. You team it with a transmission and you have some issues too. There's a lot of wind-up in first gear, and the ratios are very short. In fact, a number of people have said they like to drive from a standing start by going in second gear.
Yeah, it's almost, first, the way the ratio is almost seems like a granny gear in a truck, and it is hard to be smooth with. In fact, you can say that about a lot of the control inputs for this car. Well, I think the steering is good when you put it all together with a very stiff XD clutch, the very short ratios of the gearbox, and in some cases the ride. It makes it a car that's a little demanding to be smooth with. You can, but it does demand some attention and effort.
You also notice some vibration in the driveline through that shifter. Yeah, you notice it, you pick it up.
You know, that's a trait that the 350 had that the 370 still has.
Same thing.
And when you step on the accelerator, it's certainly not unique to this car. You see it in a few others, but you can watch the shifter move just slightly when you move the throttle, particularly if you give it some welly.
Other things that aren't at the top of the list, well, it is hot inside that thing. You get a lot of blowback heat from the engine, which is very tightly packaged, and that's probably one of the reasons.
And of course the transmission tunnel that sits right next to you.
That too. So yeah, it's hot in there in anything, you know, more than 70-degree weather. Fortunately, it has good AC.
The seats, well, there's another one. Really, you should be about our size for the
Around
Z,
5'10", yeah.
or shorter, for the Z to work well for you. Can you get in it if you're taller? Yes, you certainly can. But even at my height, 5'10", a little over there, finding a good seating position is tough. The way the lumbar is, the way the seat adjustment is, it just, for me anyway, your mileage may vary, it's tough to find a good seating position.
They'll hold you in, they are cloth seats, they're very grippy, but you do pay a price in terms of comfort on a ride that's longer than, say, 30-40 minutes.
But there are pretty big blind spots here. If you look to your left rear or your right rear, not easy to see.
Let's bottom line it for you. We've given the pros and the cons. I'm going to say really quick, fun, but could be a lot better.
Refinement. Investment in refining this sports car would be, I would think, relatively affordable for Nissan, and they should do it. They have a great chassis, they need a better power plant, more refinement, smoother control input, and you would have a car that would be a ball. Nissan, we encourage you to invest in your sports cars.
Performance is worth it. That'll do it for this time on Twin Cam. We'll see you on the next one.